Let's bring in former FBI Assistant Director and Attorney Chris Swecker. Great to see you, Chris. You're taking this ugly, ugly battle.
Yeah, unfortunately, the FBI is caught in another political firestorm. And, you know, the only way to get through things like this is to do things the way you've always done them. And the FBI has done thousands of these special inquiries. Not an FBI investigation, an FBI special inquiry. Those are two different things. And everybody keeps referencing this FBI investigation. That's not what it is. These are special inquiries for presidential appointees. They're handled all the time.
You know, it's interesting that you put the perspective correctly there, Chris, to set the expectations level and even and correct. I mean, what's so upsetting, Chris, is now it feels like the truth of accusations now hinge on someone's identity, their emotions, their ideology, the ideology of the accuser. And it feels like, Chris, you know, like hearsay and speculation now constitute legitimate evidence, so that an assertion, an accusation of a crime is unimpeachable proof. The accusation is tantamount to a conviction, when really, Chris, it should be about the where, when, why, and how it took place. That all feels now irrelevant.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm a former prosecutor. I was a prosecutor before I went in the FBI. I've handled cases like this as a prosecutor and as an agent. And what does matter are the facts, things that can be corroborated, things that can be contradicted, not just what people say, but things that are verifiable in some fashion or another. That's the kind of cases you take to court. So allegations are one thing, and facts are another. So the FBI is going to go about doing the best they can to try to either refute or contradict the witness statements and the alleged victim statements and the alleged perpetrator statements. That's what they do well, and they've done it before.
Chris, can they really wrap it up by this week, this inquiry, as you pointed out? Because it feels like this is going to be about chasing down alibis or getting things like work records for Mark Judge at Safeway to see if it matches Dr. Ford's account. What's your take? Are they going to get it done this week?
They will. These things always come with a really short deadline to do a lot more than what they're going to have to do, what they're having to do with the supplemental. They're usually a 21-day deadline. The FBI has the resources, they have the people, they have the experience. If they're given a 7-day deadline, they will get it in 7 days. Now, everybody's going to want more. I suspect at the end of this, nobody's going to be satisfied. But I think we're going to have a very good product from the FBI in terms of the follow-up on the background.
Chris Swecker, great to see you, sir. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Live from Washington, D.C., fast-paced, smart talk, what's trending, and breaking news as it happens. It's Benson and Harf with Guy Benson and Marie Harf.
What does that feel like to be kind of the man without a country?
That's what it feels like. It does. I could never warm to the president. Long before he ran, he talked about President Obama not being a citizen. I thought that itself is disqualifying. You cannot do that. And then talked about John McCain in a derogatory way, and then talked about Mexicans in a derogatory way. And I just think that we've got to do better than that. We can't refer to our opponents, political opponents on the other side of the aisle, as losers and clowns. We have too big of issues to solve in this country than to just be partisan all the time.
It is Monday, October 1st. Welcome to this new month. I'm Marie Harf in Washington, D.C. My friend and co-host Guy Benson's in New York City tonight. We are Benson and Harf, and that voice you just heard was the man of the hour, Senator Jeff Flake, a Republican senator from Arizona who's retiring at the end of this Congress, talking about his larger concerns about the partisanship, about President Trump, sort of setting the stage behind what was a very big decision he made on Friday to call for an FBI investigation into Brett Kavanaugh. A lot to unpack there, but I think that gives us a window into how Jeff Flake is approaching his last few months in office. On the line with us now to ask him about this and many other things is Andrew McCarthy, best-selling author, contributing editor at National Review, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, a Fox News contributor. He's on Twitter at Andrew C. McCarthy. Thank you for joining the show again tonight.
It's my pleasure. How are you?
We're doing well. We're getting through this Monday together. I want to start, Andy, with Jeff Flake and take a step back from the ins and outs of the Kavanaugh process, although I think we'll get to those. But how do you evaluate Jeff Flake? It's his last few months in office. He clearly feels uncomfortable with the level of partisanship on both sides. And he's a key vote, not just on this, but on some other issues. Give us your thoughts on Senator Flake.
Well, I sympathize with anyone who says that, President Trump's manner is off-putting especially to people that kind of do what we do and inhabit this world. On the other hand, I've had to sort of deal with it. I mean, he's the president, and he's going to be the president. And if I don't like him on Twitter, it doesn't make any difference because 63 million people decided to elect him, and he's going to be the president for at least 4 years. And I think sometimes a lot of his opposition is a little bit prissy about, is so off-put, I guess, by his manner that they're not willing to come to grips with the fact that he's the president, he's going to be the president, and we have to deal. And, I think Senator Flake falls clearly into that category. He's gotten to a point where I think he doesn't have an effective working relationship with the president and the administration, at least at times. And I think everybody's got to kind of, sort of suck it up and have an effective working relationship to the extent they can. I was in a lot of criminal cases with a lot of lawyers who I didn't like and didn't like me. But if we didn't deal with each other, you couldn't get a case across the finish line. So you actually have to, no matter how much you don't want to, you have to kind of suck it up and deal with it.
Andy, you have a piece out today at nationalreview.com about a new argument that we've heard from the left in recent days after the testimony from Judge Kavanaugh. And sort of, I tweeted about this over the weekend where they begin by opposing him within minutes of the announcement that he's the nominee. Then they sit on these allegations for 2 months and drop them at an opportune time after his hearings. Then they call him a liar. They validate a gang rape allegation against him. The next day he is furious and is visibly furious in response. And they take that fury and say, well, now he doesn't have the temperament to do this job. I think it's a very, very cynical line of argument. But I'm going to ask you this. I went back and I watched it again over the weekend because this is something that's weighing on my mind. I, in retrospect, agreed and understood why he did what he did, the way he did it. It resonated with me and I related to it. Going back, I wish he wouldn't have been quite as partisan in a few of the statements that he made, clearly in anger about the Democrats, about this being vengeance for an election that they didn't want to lose, the Clintons, so on and so forth. Is there something of a point, even if you say this is not disqualifying, did he go a little bit too far, and should he at some point walk a little bit of this back?
I must say I'm not there, Guy. I mean, to my mind, there's a lot of unattractive aspects of the human character. A lot of things that we do where if we could be like perfectly objective and totally unemotional, we'd be unhappy with. But not to go all college philosophy, right? But Aristotle tells us, when something is a part of our character and a part of our reality, we ask what it's for, right? We don't say that it's bad. And if being furious is part of our character, we have that attribute because it's useful for something. And I think in this instance, it was called for. I mean, you got a guy who was called a serial rapist. Some of the stuff that was put out about him, forget about the stuff that just came out in the Senate hearing. Some of the stuff that was put out about him was just atrocious. And I thought that I frankly thought that after Dr. Ford testified and the prosecutor that the Republicans brought in to question her did not confront
this back?
I must say I'm not there, Guy. I mean, to my mind, there's a lot of unattractive aspects of the human character. A lot of things that we do where if we could be like perfectly objective and totally unemotional, we'd be unhappy with. But I mean, not to go all college philosophy, right? But Aristotle tells us, when something is a part of our character and a part of our reality, we ask what it's for, right? We don't say that it's bad. And if being furious is part of our character, we have that attribute because it's useful for something. And I think in this instance, it was called for. I mean, you got a guy who was called a serial rapist. Some of the stuff that was put out about him, forget about the stuff that just came out in the Senate hearing. Some of the stuff that was put out about him was just atrocious. And I thought that the moment, I frankly thought that after Dr. Ford testified and the prosecutor that the Republicans brought in to question her did not confront the incoherent aspects of her story, that I really thought he was not going to be confirmed. I thought that she had come off well enough that it was pretty much over, that I thought these wobbling senators would go the other way. And I thought his opening statement, which ran for almost an hour, got him back in the game. I mean, I know that everybody's talking about Lindsey Graham's speech, and it was something of a barn burner for sure. But I think if Kavanaugh had not given the opening statement that he gave, we wouldn't even be talking about Lindsey Graham, because the moment called for what he provided, which was indignation and passion and a marshaling of the facts that only somebody who is as good a lawyer as he is would be capable of doing under those circumstances. So I really didn't have a problem with it.
Andy, I want to ask you a question about what are the kinds of things that could come out of this investigation that would make you change your mind about whether Brett Kavanaugh should be confirmed? For example, if it's proven that he was not truthful about something, another network right now reporting that Brett Kavanaugh was trying to marshal friends and supporters of his to come out against the Ramirez allegations before the New Yorker story published. He testified before Congress that the first he heard of the allegations was after it published. So we'll see if that proves to be true. But are there things that could come out of the investigation is there anything that might give you pause about Brett Kavanaugh?
Sure. I mean, if it emerged that he gave false testimony about something that was critically important, sure. And if it turned out that there was anything, I think that if it turned out that there was anything to these allegations, at the moment I think that they seem to be disintegrating. But obviously, if there was something to them, then he shouldn't be. He not only shouldn't be on the Supreme Court, he shouldn't be a federal judge. I don't expect that to happen, but I did this for a living for a long time, and what we always tell jurors, the people who have to decide, as opposed to people in the peanut gallery like me.
Right.
What we tell jurors is that they should hold their tongue and not express opinions, even though there are many times during a trial when something will happen that you'll have a strong opinion about. We always encourage jurors not to express themselves until the end when they've heard all the arguments and gotten instructed by the court, because when you plant your feet, just in a human way, it's very hard to walk it back when you see evidence that refutes what you thought was true. So I think, for people who have to decide this, if we're going to have this investigation, I mean, I wouldn't have had the investigation, but if you're going to have it, then you have to consider everything that comes in and weigh it and make a decision.
Andy, you alluded just a moment ago to the fact that you were for a long time a federal prosecutor. And I referenced earlier in the show, and I have a piece up at townhall.com referencing this as well, the 5-page memo put out by Rachel Mitchell, who is the sex crimes prosecutor who was there for the hearings last week. She has gone through this evidence backwards and forwards, and she came out with, in my view, a very compelling case about the weakness of the case against Judge Kavanaugh. Have you read the memo? Do you agree with her analysis? And I'll leave it at that.
I've read the memo. I agree with her analysis. But what really, I must say, annoys me about it, Guy, is that I think that America was riveted to this testimony, this what turned out to be a television event on, I guess it was Thursday now, right?
Yes.
I think, having just done this for a living, it seemed to me that she was conducting this hearing, which was much more like a very contentious hearing or a trial. She was conducting it as if she was taking a deposition. And it seemed to me in the moment that while the Democrats on the committee were showing that 5 minutes can be used in a very effective way, you ask 2 or 3 pointed questions. Now, they had the advantage of being sort of friendly questioners, so they were taking her where they wanted her to go and where she was willing to go, and then making a few statements about the process, which had the chairman of the committee back on his heels from time to time. So I think they demonstrated that in a hearing of this type, even though a lot of people have criticized the format, a lot can be done in 5 minutes. Whereas I thought Ms. Mitchell, for all her being methodical and all that stuff, she looked like she was collecting information with the thought that at some other point she would confront the witness, but just not today. And it seemed to me that today was the time. And
Right.
that has consequences because people came away from it thinking she was credible. And I think you could say she was sincere and still maintain that her story doesn't make any sense, and that needed to be confronted.
Andrew McCarthy, Fox News contributor, National Review. You can find him online, has decades of experience working in law enforcement issues. Thank you for joining the show tonight. I know we will be watching the next few days very closely to see what comes from this process. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. Have a great night.